Now, the FEMA Administrator, Deanne Criswell.
Thank you, Gavin. I did have an opportunity right now just to join the governor and the director to survey some of the damages that have impacted this part of the state. And as the governor said, what we're seeing is some devastating damage that's out there. And we know that there's going to be a lot of needs as we go into the recovery process. As the governor mentioned, this is one of the counties that is declared for individual assistance. Individuals can start that process now to begin and jumpstart their recovery by registering for assistance at FEMA. You can do that by going to disasterassistance.gov. You can go download the FEMA app and register there, or you can call 1-800-621-FEMA or 1-800-621-3362. Additionally, we are going to have teams of individuals wearing FEMA shirts. You'll see them coming through the neighborhoods in the days and weeks to come. If you have questions, if you've registered online, if you have questions, you can ask them. They'll have iPads. They can pull up your case. They can look it up, and they can give you some information. We'll also be partnering with the state as they set up disaster recovery centers to bring in some of our personnel, again, to assist people as they go through this process. We know that there's going to be a lot of needs as we go into the recovery. Insurance is going to be one of the primary mechanisms, but FEMA's funding can support things like some damages to your homes as well as property that has been lost or personal property that has been lost. I mean, we do have some limits in what we can support, but we'll bring in all of our federal partners and nonprofit agencies to try to identify what those unmet needs are and really help all of the members of these communities get what they need to support their recovery efforts. Thank you.
We also will be set up for help with individual assistance. We'll also have some of the private sector supports available. And then Jimmy Petronis is going to lead as our CFO insurance villages where people can come in and meet with the carriers and make these claims. I think the thing we want to see is just fast processing of claims. I mean, we know what happened here, and we know people suffered damage. Some of the stuff obviously is going to be a direct impact of the 155 mile an hour winds, and will be under those policies. But then you go into other parts of the county, and you're going to have flood claims under the National Flood Insurance Program. So we want people to be able to provide to be provided with the ability to do that and process. And I'll tell you, when you go through stuff like that, if you can get those claims processed quickly, it not only helps you financially, really takes a lot of apprehension away, and people feel again in a lot better place, because there's a lot of uncertainty when you have a total loss like this, like people are suffering. So I thank Jimmy for doing that. I think that that's really, really important, and we are going to be both very strong on wanting these claims processed quickly, but also on the lookout, very strong against scam artists who may be out there. And I know Jimmy's talked a lot about that, and we have our Attorney General here who I know would be interested in people that are trying to leverage people's misfortune for their own benefit. We don't want that. That's not appropriate here. We just want to get people taken care of, and so that's what we'll be doing. I was happy to see as I was driving in here, I think it was probably going through Cape Coral, I saw some of the stores opening. I saw some of that, and so there were basically 48 hours after the landfall, and you're starting to see people bounce back. So that's a good sign. We know there's a lot of work left to do, but as soon as you can get more power, all the water issues taken care of, I think the fuel is going to be in really good shape. I think it's really just a matter of the gas stations either running their generators or having enough electricity to do it. But Tampa Port, Everglades, all those are open. You got massive amounts of fuel now coming into the state, and so we feel really good about that. And we're also fortunate that there are over 42,000 linemen stationed to help restore power, and so they got in very early yesterday, and a lot of progress being made throughout the state. Parts of Lee County and Charlotte, where the whole system was uprooted, is going to require a rebuild. And I think people understand that that's something that's just going to take longer than just simply re-hooking up a wire to a utility pole or something of that nature. But from the reports I've gotten, there's a lot of the infrastructure outside of the barrier islands that held up okay. And so that's just going to make reconnecting that a little bit easier than if you had to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. But I'm really impressed of the pre-staging effort and then really getting on the target to try to get the lights on as soon as possible. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Yes. So I'll let Kevin handle that because he's in contact with all them.
Yeah. So the question was, do we feel like we had enough time and did we communicate effectively with Lee County? I talked to all of the area impacted directors every day since last Friday at 11:15. Then on Saturday 11:15. Sunday was 11:15 and 5:15. It has been 11:15 and 5:15 every day since. Specifically to Lee County, I talked with Sandra probably a couple of times a day, each and every day, and we talked about the situations. Again, this particular storm went everywhere from the Keys all the way up to the Big Bend, and even a little bit further west of that, and then back. 48 hours before landfall, which is when Lee County would have had to start evacuations to be successful, 48 hours before this, we had this storm going into Levy County, up the Gulf Coast. About 36 hours, it started bending back more towards the Tampa Bay region. And then just before, Lee County, as soon as they were made aware of the storm surge and as soon as they made they had that information from the National Weather Service, they immediately issued the Cat A/B evacuation area. So they made the best decision they could based on the information they had at the time. And when the information came in that they needed to evacuate, they did not hesitate, they immediately pulled the trigger.
And I'd also just say, I mean, because, and I said, I mean, on Sunday, 72 hours before landfall, Fort Myers and Naples were not even in the cone. You had it going into probably North Florida. I think it was, Taylor County maybe at the time? So you had to go into Taylor County. Now I stressed, and Kevin stressed, there was a lot of uncertainty. It was based on modeling. And we said even if it went to Taylor County, you would get surge in southwest Florida, and people should just understand that, and there would be flooding. But there is a difference between a storm that's going to hit North Florida that will have peripheral effects on your region versus one that's making a direct impact. And so what I saw in the southwest Florida is as the data changed, they sprung into action, and I think they acted very quickly. I think that, and I think Carmine would agree with this, people were made aware. They were told about the dangers, and some people just made the decision that they did not want to leave. But I think that they were apprised of that, and I know they worked really hard to go into the very vulnerable areas and the barrier islands and some of the low-lying areas and issue that. And I think that was the appropriate thing to do. So basically, you're having people go constant missions. I think what they're finding is it's a mix of some people that want to get off the island, some people that probably were in a lot of distress 2 days ago, are just saying, thank you, we're good, we want to stay put, we want to be here. And so those folks are being left. How many people evacuated or on the island? I've spoken to the mayor of Sanibel. Nobody's really sure because you either evacuate or you don't. It's not something you have to check in with the authorities for. You do it. Obviously, there's a lot of seasonal residents in Sanibel, and Florida is in some parts of Florida, seasonal. Now, she made the point, the mayor did, and I've seen this firsthand, because it's Florida, more people want to stay here longer now than they used to, particularly since COVID. So how many of those winter residents were here now? It's not sure. Clearly, it was not high season. So clearly, you had far fewer than you would have if you checked that population in January or February. But they're constantly going. They are doing quick checks, even door to door, to see if there's anybody in need of assistance. I would say the one thing that I've seen is, as they're going there, you're not seeing a lot of people like hanging out window, just like desperate for help, even the next day. Once the storm passed, People were by and large stable. There was need for rescue for some, but many were in relatively good shape. Now, I think what we don't know is, you look at like a Fort Myers Beach, you look here, if a house just washes away into the ocean, into the water with 155 mile an hour winds, if that person evacuated, that's great. If they didn't, I don't know how you survive that. I mean, I think it's just such a punishing wallop, and so those are some of the questions. Now, the state of Florida launched an ability via text message for people to report. They put it out last night at about midnight, and by 8 o'clock this morning, over 10,000 people responded via text message saying that they were safe, and so that's good. There is obviously more people, but as Kevin made the point, when Hurricane Michael hit the Panhandle in 2018, there was like tens of thousands, and it's not that they were quote missing. It's just people evacuated. They were out of comms for a while, and that really starts to narrow, and so I think it's true. We're more narrow today.
Yes,
you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. So again, as the governor was pointing out, when we had Hurricane Michael at 2 weeks, we are somewhere in the we had about 30,000 people that were reported. About 2 weeks into it, we had about 10,000 people that we were still trying to match up. And then over the 2 week period, or after the 2 week period, that started to slim itself down. We are already at a point, based on the information we have already made we had well over 15,000 contacts saying people may be displaced, they may be out of or maybe in harm's way. Urban Search and Rescue has made 3,000 actual contacts, actual drop point, waypoint marks on a map, and then we have already narrowed that list of 15-ish thousand down to 3,000, and it's going to continue to grow, decrease significantly. To that end, because we've engaged technology on so many different platforms, allowing people to shelter in place and tell us that, allowing us to do the text messaging, allowing now, this is day 2. Already got that whittled down, and by the time we get back, I'm sure it's going to be less than that. So we are very effective at trying to whittle that list down. We're now at a point where that's probably going to be door to door. And I want to take just a moment of privilege, sir. Yep. Urban Search and Rescue in this type of environment is going to be what we call a hasty search. What they're doing is they're on the streets, going door to door per se. People like they're listening for the moans and groans and things of that nature, right? That's what's referred to as a hasty search. Then the Urban Search and Rescue teams, and that's where they're at right now, is they're coming back doing that very, very technical door-to-door, knock on it, turn debris over, yell into the structure, try to search it as best they can. That is a very slow and tedious process. And then what will happen, and this is one of the reasons we're asking for the additional Florida Urban Search and Rescue teams, is they will do a secondary search. So everything will be searched in thorough twice, and a hasty search that they started out with. So after we do the door-to-door, turn the debris, we're going to come back and do that again. So that takes time.
Thanks.
Thank you, crew, Sheriff. I think we can all agree at this point you have done a stellar job. As a Pine Island resident, you can see our access road behind you. There is none. I, on a personal note, and a lot of Pine Islanders I speak for, would like to know if there's a way of getting access to try to remediate our own damages. We've all checked on our neighbors. I think there's a lot of good news for life and limb.
Oh, good. It's good to hear.
Trying to see what's left of our
Yeah. So basically the question, a Pine Island resident, they've been able to check on a lot of people, and he said by and large good news in terms of safety of life and limb for those residents, because this was the eye of the storm right here. But what about the access? I mean, you see the bridge out there. Look, I'm committed to fixing that, with the state of Florida, and obviously the county can help. But yeah, we've got to obviously provide access. Now, how quickly can that be done? Even with best efforts, is unclear. Those are not easy things to just do. In the meantime, Kevin, what are some of the options?
So I'm going to talk from a state perspective, and for those that know me, I have a local law enforcement perspective, so I'm then going to ask the sheriff to come up and talk about that for just briefly. First thing we got to do is we've got to get the public safety officials over there and get the roads open. That's why we're bringing in the National Guard with their heavy equipment to do what we call route clearance. So as soon as we can get those barges across there, we can get the heavy technical equipment for both the National Guard and Urban Search and Rescue over here so they can do that heavy lift debris turnover, check for any type of, extreme situations. Then we will work on trying to get you guys back in there. I will tell you, and I know Sheriff Carmine's got all their, they have the area secured. That is one of the very secure. We have security over there, and I'm going to let Sheriff come up now and talk about local security issues. But that's what we got to do first. We got to get in there. We got to get the stuff moved out of the way, do the very detailed search, all while this is already secured, and then the sheriff will talk about how to do ingress back into the location.
Thank you. Thank you. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. I will tell you this with certainty. The first thing the governor and I spoke about yesterday, amongst many things, was some kind of temporary ferry to get the residents back and forth, or transportation. Obviously, the search, rescue, and recovery mission is ongoing and primary, but equally as important is getting the residents back to their house safely and making sure they're safe when they get back into that residence if what the damage is has to be assessed. I will also tell you with certainty, I've spoken to the Attorney General, Ashley Moody, at length. We are not going to tolerate, and I mean zero tolerance, when we say anyone that thinks they're going to thrive on the residents of this county or state, when we just took a horrific hit, I can guarantee you that is not going to happen. We got a community response unit that's going to be out here for multi reasons. One is to deliver water and information, because a lot of residents don't have internet and they're not up to date on all the press conferences and other things. So we're going to go back to the old school where we are out here delivering that message personally in that concierge level. Most importantly, safety and security, as always. And I guarantee you, we will be out here in full force. And any person that makes that horrific error, that thinks they're going to do something to one of my residents in my county, I guarantee you it'll be swift incarceration immediately with no tolerance.
Will there be 24-hour surveillance in the waterways? Because this is how they get in. They revel in, they pillage, and they're out of there.
When I say security, that's every aspect. Okay, we have a full-fledged Marine unit. We got the Coast Guard, our local, state, and federal partners. At all ends, we are working together as a cohesive team, and we will cover our residents, and your safety and security is always going to be number one, and you can rest well. Zero tolerance means zero tolerance.
My only question is, in St. James City, in these canal areas where I'm right on the canal,
Yes, sir.
there's going to be a way to get ferried in, not even needing a roadway, really. I know my boat's somewhere in the mangroves, maybe.
Well, I understand. I'm sorry to hear about that, but I will tell you this. We're utilizing all-terrain vehicles. We're utilizing flat boats that can access canals. So it's not just getting that ferry. We have jet skis. We have everything known to mankind, thanks to our great governor, who's given us everything, okay, to make certain that we can address every issue very specific to the needs and the demographics that are requesting it.
Yeah, and I mean, so fixing the bridge, yes, we will do that. We have to do that. So that will happen. It just, I can't tell you how long that will take. They're going to have to figure out the extent of the damage. It's interesting. I'm looking at Sanibel, and actually this one too. The pylons in the road over the water were totally fine. It was only the places that were on the land and in the approach to the land. Sanibel Causeway, you had it on the actual sandbar, and it got washed away. Yesterday it was a new inlet created. Today the sand is starting to come back. So part of that construction was really, really good. I don't know in some of those other areas how it was lying like that. Just a lot of force, a lot of things being moved. So we'll definitely do that. The state of Florida will be in for that. I think it's important both here in Sanibel. In the interim, we've told the county, we want to be helpful. So however they think it makes sense to get people where they need to go, we'll be helpful on that too. They used to just run the ferry to Sanibel. People would go off. That's how they got there. So now we're in a situation you got to figure out, what about cars? Let us know. I spoke with the mayor of Sanibel about the same thing. Let us know. But there needs to be some intermediate solution before we can fix all the roads. And I will just say with what the sheriff said, I was touring part of Charlotte County. I was touring Punta Gorda yesterday, and they boarded up all the businesses. And there were people that wrote on their plywood, You loot, we shoot. And at the end of the day, we are not going to allow lawlessness to take advantage of this situation. We are a law and order state, and this is a law and order community. So do not think that you're going to go take advantage of people who've suffered misfortune. Areas in particular that are vulnerable to that, we've got to have all hands on deck to make sure that the rule of law, we be able to bounce back from this as tough as it's been. There's resiliency, there's grit in these communities. Think if they're out of state, they'll think of like some ritzy hotel like on Miami Beach. And we want to make sure that we're able to bring, and the cameras will, but we'll be here.